Thank you, Father. Hallelujah. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy you are here. I'm so happy that you are receiving these messages, that they are meaningful to you, and that the Lord is speaking to you. We give God all the glory, all the praise for all of the things that He does in us and how He makes everything work together for our good. He always leads us to the truth. He always leads us to His glory, His light, His love. And I'm just grateful that I have this platform to be able to share that love of the Father. You know that I'm very excited about these messages that I have been giving. I am having so much joy because of this profound truth, and with truth comes liberation, comes freedom. Whenever we receive a new revelation, everywhere you start seeing that revelation, everywhere you start seeing that truth. We are on this path. We receive the path of Christ that leads to the Father, to the face of the Father, to that living the ascension life. I want to talk about the prize. We spoke about the path, the beginning, the middle, the last leg of the race. I want to speak about to the end, that prize, and what does it look like now that we are embracing this new way of life, letting go of ego, self, embracing humility and love, and walking in humility and love. So if you say, okay, well, I shouldn't do this, try not to do this, don't do this, like there's so many don't do of letting the ego control the situation. Instead of looking at all those things that you shouldn't do, just focus on humility and love, and living in that humility and love, and let that be your guide, because as that's your guide, then all those things will take care of themselves. What is this prize? What is this way of life? Like I've said before, the gates, the big giant gate doors have been opened. It's like saying you're invited now. Everyone is invited to live this way of life, because remember, we're entering into this new age. The new age is here, but we're also learning how to live in that new age, learning how to live in righteousness, expanding that consciousness. The new age is all about that expansion of our consciousness, realizing the truth. That way of living that is called living in Christ. I died, nevertheless I live. The ego died, nevertheless my soul is alive. My soul is joined with the Father, and not only that, my soul has expanded to receive the fullness of the depths of the Father's love. That is what the goal is. That's what the prize is. And in that prize, there's so much more. That is what we call living ascension life. Always being connected to the mind of the Lord. Always surrendered 24/7. Your will to the Father's will. And your emotions are no longer based on some false reality. Your heart is not a heart of stone. It is a heart of flesh. Exactly what the Father wanted. For us to have that heart of flesh, and to have that compassion and that empathy, because that's what changes the world. The goal that we are now looking at is living through humility and love, acting out through humility and love. And remember, when we act out through love, you can't act out through love when you're in a rush, when you're not in the present moment. In order to release that love out of yourself and embody the love and be the frequency of the love, so the person, whoever you're with, can feel that love, that frequency, that vibration coming from you, it has to have a slower pace. It has to be in the present moment. It has to be in the now moment, in the heart moment. I released a video a long time ago. I will link it up here so you may understand what it means to live in the now, in that heart space, because the Father is now, everything is now, faith is now, love is now, joy is now. We have to surrender, release the past once and for all. This is the things we're coming out of. We're coming out of that old age. That age where people are in the matrix. They don't even realize they're in the matrix. The ego is running them, but they don't even know it. That's the old age that we're coming out of, gaining that perspective, that bird's eye perspective, that higher consciousness of the truth. When you sit with the Lord and you feel His presence as if you're sitting on a bench with Him and you're not saying anything, you're just enjoying each other's company and you're just basking and enjoying His presence. As you do this, you notice how you can easily shift and consciously feel His presence again. And it becomes like a passive state, like autopilot, and it feels like that all day long. This ascension realm, this new earth, it's the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's you having found the kingdom of heaven on earth, which was the whole point of receiving Christ. Well, not just the point, but of receiving Christ and coming to the place where you finally overcome the matrix, overcome that test, gone through the lesson, and was able to come out of that matrix of ego, the matrix of feeling it all, emotions of it all, that emotional state of reacting all the time, not knowing that this is a test or the matrix game. It's just this reaction. It's like everything happens, we react with emotion. But once you come out of that, and then you come into the kingdom of heaven on earth, because that's where we're supposed to find the kingdom of heaven on her earth, and we can do this through Christ in us and already having laid that path for us to follow. He does it in us. He strengthened us, and that because we couldn't ever, there was nothing that we could do to save ourselves. So He came to show the path that we would embrace Him, meaning embrace that path. And now we would walk that path out. But He promised, the Father promised, I'll be with you. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I'm always going to be with you. I'm going to be watching you. And we get out of that matrix by finding the stillness in the Father, by ceasing activity, by embracing Him with you. That kind of meditation, that you meditate on the Lord day and night. You meditate on the Word, who the Lord is the Word. You meditate on the Father, your presence, your awareness, your thoughts, your feelings. There's always that baseline that He is with you. And you sense Him all the time. You become still. Be still and know that I am God. This is the path to coming out of that reactivity mode of ego. Ego was birthed because of sin. Ego keeping us from the fullness, from receiving the fullness of the depths and heights and widths and breadths of the Father's love. That ego has to be burned up by the fire of the Lord. It's like that gold, that process of getting rid of all of the impurities of the gold. You are the gold. The ego is the impurities. So we have to allow this path. And on this path, there's many sufferings. They told us in the Bible, you're going to go through a lot. Don't be surprised when all of a sudden it seems like, why is all of this happening to me? As if it's happening to me. And they're saying, Don't be surprised by these things. Even the Lord had to go through all these things. This is the path of Him leading us, of being led to the Father, to receiving the fullness of the Father's love in our souls. And what does that do? That transforms us in so many ways to be like Christ, to have the same things, to do the same things, and to be like Him. You'll do the same things I do and even greater than these. Don't be surprised when these things happen. Let that process occur, because that is getting rid of the pride of the ego, of arrogance, of self-preservation, self-protection. He's our protection, remember. Getting out of that selfness, ego-ness. And we come to the end, the goal, out of the matrix. We've overcome that matrix and we're living in this state now. This state that is run by humility and love, that is simplicity, that is no longer that reactivity mode, from reactions, from defending your own self, from ego coming up and trying to not allow humility to let it dwindle, to squish it, to let it crumble, to let it be burned away. We surrender the process of this path of Christ because we've received Christ. This is the path you're going to go on, and be joyous in it because you're coming closer and closer to the end of the goal, which is the prize of the upward calling, the prize of the heavenly vocation. Remember, Jesus told us heaven is here. The kingdom of heaven is nigh, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. So it's an internal path of finding the Father within, of experiencing the love of the Father more and more and more and more. As long as the ego is there, the soul cannot completely receive the fullness. I'm talking about the fullness. Of course, we receive the joy at many times. That's the path, more and more and more and more, until finally at the end, the Father will, in His wonderful fire of wisdom, it is a wisdom of fire, it is a fire of wisdom. In His fire, He will burn up the remnants of that ego self. But what do we do? Because it's a passivity state, we're not really supposed to be actively doing anything. We're just sitting with the Lord. And we're just in Him and He is in us. And being that oneness, practicing that oneness. He knows when is the right time for you to completely come out of that path and enter into the heavenly kingdom on earth. Church has always told us, religion has told us, you get to heaven when you die. That is a gospel, on and on. But the real gospel is that you go on this path to find heaven on earth. That's why you accepted Christ. In accepting Christ, you signed the contract that, yes, I allow myself to go on this path. I allow you, Father, to guide me and lead me in this path. But many people will reject the process of that path because they don't understand that this is what's supposed to happen. To get rid of ego, burn up ego, annihilation of ego. Ego was created in the Garden of Eden because of sin. That feeling yourself alienated from the love of the Father. See, Adam and Eve, with the sin, they felt alienated from the love of the Father. The love, the fullness. So they're like, it's better if you don't it's better if we hide. It's better if we cover ourselves. The soul is innocent and pure. The soul is yourself coming from God. And now the point is for us to reunite back to God, back to the Father, back to his arms in fullness. In fullness, because that fullness transforms us. Transforms us. It allows us to be completely surrendered in our will. Remember, the soul is made up of your mind, your will, and your emotions. So what is left after the ego is gone? The soul. The soul can fully receive the fullness of the love of the Father, which transforms you, which is the power to transform. The power to have the mind of Christ, one mind, one consciousness with the Father, one thoughts, same thoughts, and will, as well as emotion. So your heart, empathy, compassion, love, the Father being able to flow his love through you, to you, and to others, and to the world around you. And will. Will is what gives you the ability of the upward calling to heaven while you are on earth. That means you're an ambassador. You're an ambassador. You're a leader. You're the government on earth. You're the ecclesia of the new age that is coming. You see how this information is so relevant at this time, and it is exciting because that means we are entering into that new age. This information is coming, so you'll know this is what the path looks like. This is how we get into it, through surrender, through stillness, and through rejecting the ego. Because now we see the ego is not us. In the matrix, when a person is reacting, always adding that fire to the fire, always hitting the steel, always that reaction, that's playing the matrix. The matrix loves that. But to come out of the matrix, one realizes that they're not the ego. They're separate. The ego is separate. No longer having to react, but being that spectator. Having that objective view, having that bird's eye view. So when something now, this is the life, this is the life that we are now living, this ascension realm, this kingdom of heaven on earth, this is the life that we are living. When something happens, it's no longer from a place of putting fuel to that fire. Ego wants to come up, it wants to react, it wants to throw faults at people, it wants to argue, it wants to defend itself, it wants to preserve itself. But whatever that situation is, you see from a bird's eye point of view that this is what is happening, but I don't need to react to it because I am not the ego. I am the soul, and the soul is stillness and oneness with the Father, because the Father's frequency is stillness, oneness, surrender, timelessness, a place of timelessness, the place of eternal. So this ascension life, the kingdom of heaven, is the place of eternal. So we are living from this place now, from this stillness. You don't have to react anymore. You can be still. You can allow God to defend you. You can allow the truth in time to reveal itself. This is the new consciousness. This is the awareness that we are living now. This new reality, the kingdom, the heaven on earth reality. This is so exciting. Aren't you excited with me? I know you're excited with me. I'm excited. I am so full of joy. Another thing, what is your default state now? In the matrix, with the game of ego, what was a person's default state? Maybe depression, maybe anger, maybe feeling the injustices of the world. So many things could be that default state. What is our default state now? Now in this, that we have come in through the gates. We have come in through, Father, we come in through those gates. We enter into the kingdom of heaven. We allow your Spirit to lead us. Being led by the Spirit are the sons of God. We allow your Spirit to lead us, Father. And we come, we enter. All those who wish to enter, let them enter. The gates are open. The way is clear for you to enter. There is such an invitation right now for us to enter. The Father is saying, come, come, come. Come, come and know that I am God. Come, come and know. Be still. Be still. And know that I am God. And you shall see God. The humble shall see God. The humble shall inherit this new earth, this kingdom of heaven on earth. The humble shall see God. And you're going to see God. You're going to see God. You're going to see God. Whatever God looks like. Whatever God looks like, you're going to see God. Though ego will not see God. But you are of God. Your soul is of God. You have seen God before, and you will go back to see God again. That's where we are right now. That's the place, the default. I was speaking about the default. What is our default now? Joy. Joy. Joy is our default. Joy is our default. What happens because of that? We live through the heart, that is the present moment, where everything is now, knowing is now, feeling is now. Whatever we need to receive, we receive in the now, in the heart space. We live from this joy, means we live from a flow in that creativity, humility, and love. The Holy Spirit leads, no longer that led out of impulses of ego, out of fear. Ego reacts from fear. We know that in the Garden of Eden. Ego reacts, many ways of sin react because ego is there. Sin is there, then ego reacts. It lies, it manipulates, it puts blame, it makes others pay for its sins. But we flow in humility. So this place of the kingdom of heaven is a place of everything flowing. This is a major point I want to get across, that everything flows because your will is surrendered. Will is one of the major things. We have mind, will, and emotions. And will, so we have thoughts of the Father, heart of the Father, and the will. Our will needs to be completely surrendered to the Father's will. Ego oftentimes gets in the way of fully allowing the Father's will to work through us, being surrendered to the leading of the Holy Spirit, being surrendered to His will. So let me give an example. If a person's will is completely surrendered, everything happens step by step by step in such unfolding of synchronicities and things. Okay, so say you're somewhere, you go somewhere, and there's a person standing over there, and you have this your will, if it surrendered to the Father. The Father's will is for you to go give something or say something or strike up a conversation. And so you're surrendered, you allow that process. That person says something. The Father's will is to ask about something that the person said. The person, so it's like it leads to another amazing thing happening and another amazing thing. And by the time you know it, you are somewhere where it was not by your works. It was completely by grace and by favor. Oh, I just have this will of the Father. Let's just call it what it is. I have the feeling that the will of the Father is for me to do this, for me to reach out to this person, or to give this kind of message, or the Father is so wise in so many ways that He leads us and guides us. As we surrender to that, something else will come, another clue from there. As we surrender to that, and something else. And what I'm saying is, life is expanded because ego is no longer in the way. Ego has been burned up and annihilated. It is no longer in the way from you living in that abundance, because the kingdom of heaven is what Christ came on that path to give you, life and life more abundantly. So one of the major things is to release, surrender to the Father's will. I see that we do this many times in our life, but do we actually do it all the time? Because there are many times where we are led by the Spirit to do something, we don't do it, and then we realize, I should have listened to that. I should have listened to that. So that is ego getting in the way of the Father's will for us to flow through that. That is why ego has to be burned up and annihilated by surrendering to the burning up, to the wisdom of God to burn up that ego. Remember Abraham, he gave up his will. He surrendered to the Father. He was going to sacrifice his son, and God spared his son. Because oftentimes it needs your thought. Okay, I'll do this. You've already received the transfer, the prize, whatever it is. You've already received it just by the thought. It doesn't even have to be the action. Because surrender is a thought. Before it becomes an action, it's a thought. So even with the thought that, okay, I'm going to do this, but the action doesn't have to be carried out. I remember one time I had this feeling that I should donate some clothes, right? So I didn't really want to do this, and I was holding on to these clothes for some reason. All right, that was ego. Ego wants to control. Ego doesn't want to let go, because when you let go, you let the flow of life, the flow of abundance, the flow of the Father's will into your life. You're not allowing God to be God in your life, trying to control that situation, trying to make something happen. Finally, I bagged up all the clothes, like I put them by the door, like I'm going to give them away. I think it was the day after something happened that I got a whole bunch of new clothes. I didn't even give those clothes away, the other ones. They were still there by the door, ready to be given. But I received the prize of that surrender. Because with the surrender, you give up. you've given up that thing. I had already received the prize before I actually gave those clothes, because it was a thought, it was a surrender. You are not in the ego game anymore, because you've realized what it's all about. That reactivity. No more reacting out of the ego. You're not in that matrix. That's the matrix game. The point of the path that we receive Christ to get out of, to go on this path, to get out of the matrix, to enter into the kingdom of heaven, which is here on earth. The kingdom is here. The kingdom is within you. The path of that path is the inward journey of finding God within. The experience of God within. That's how the inward journey starts. In the world, but you've gotten out of the world. You've gotten out of that matrix. You're in the kingdom. You're not of the world anymore. You're in the world. You'll stay in the world. The point was for you to find the kingdom of heaven on earth, not to die and go to the kingdom of heaven. Because a lot of people want rest, right? They commit suicide because they want to be free from the ego, the constant bombarding of the ego. They want rest. They just want to rest, and they can't find that rest. Unfortunately, nobody told them this is what the path of life. Christ said, I am the life. I am the path. Anyone who follows me shall not live in darkness, but shall have the light of life. They've cut their own lives short, but if only they knew this path and what this path looks like and how to get out of it, how to get out of this matrix, what it takes to find that rest here, to find stillness here, to no longer be the reactivity of the matrix, but be like that spectator that sees it, but you are not in it. You see the world, you see what's happening. You're not of the world. You're here, you remain here, but you don't react. When you reside in the state of love, in that humility and that love, there is no more self-judgment. Self-judgment is from ego self. There is no self-judgment because the soul is pure and perfect. It is a part of God. It is light, it is pure and perfect. And now you are free from self-judgment, and you can just flowing, creativity, life in the present moment. You can have that flow. This is the things that we are living in. I'm going to say we are living in now because we've come past that gate. We've come through that gate. And this is how we can live now. No more self-judgment because we are aware, even though that we are not yet, everybody has their own level of ego dominance and all that. Even though we may not be there yet, of that totally annihilation of the ego self and burning up by the fire of God of that ego self, even though that we may not be there yet, but we have the understanding of what it means to live out of that matrix, out of that ego, at the end, to the end of the race, of the goal, of the prize. Now we are ambassadors here on earth of the kingdom of heaven. We are ambassadors, and we bring that out. We are connected with the mind, with the will, with the emotions of the Father, and we are those ambassadors, and we flow through joy, through the state of joy. That is our baseline state of joy. We know how we should react, not in ego reactivity, but in the stillness of humility and love. Love expression, humility. When ego is not in the way, you are being led by the Spirit of God. Remember, those that are led are the sons of God. This is the place where you walk with God. Ego is no longer in the way. You walk with God. You see, there's a part that we do. We recognize these things are not us. We reject them. We surrender them. We let go of them. They are not your pure, innocent soul self. And we see from this bird's eye point of view that we do not react from that way to fuel the ego. Enoch walked with God. Jesus walked with God. Elijah walked with God. Adam walked with God. You can walk with God too. You can walk with God. You can talk with God. This is all for you now. If you want to play by the rules, because now you know what the rules are of how to get out of it, how to get out of that 3D matrix world. There'll no longer be that need to hold on to things and to control things, no longer desperately trying to hold on to something and control something, not letting that thing go. As letting go, we're able to see what is God's will and then follow that. And then the next thing, follow that. Being able to flow in life, to no longer be stuck or trapped in life, but that flowing of life. This is actually the message of grace, of unmerited favor, because in the message of grace and unmerited favor, number one, you're living in the moment, the now, the present moment, and you're full of joy. So this is that grace message as well. Something very amazing when the disciples asked Jesus, "Oh, come eat with us." And he said, "No thanks. I got food that you know not of, but mine comes from doing the will of the Father." What is he really saying? My will is completely connected and surrendered to the Father's will. Therefore, I know he completely provides for me everything that I need. That flow of life, that unmerited grace, favor in life flows. We see how important this surrendering of the will is. If you want to be a part of the ecclesia, the leadership of this new kingdom of heaven on earth, there has to be, of course, surrender to the Father's will for him to lead and guide exactly and say what needs to be done to become that vessel surrendered 100% to the Father. As we do our part, as we remain in that place of sitting with the Father on that bench, that meditative state that you're just there with him. That's what it looks like, that stillness, that simplicity, that surrender, that oneness. You're not actively pursuing anything really than just sitting with the Lord, just being with the Lord. And I know I'm painting this picture that the Lord is next here, but really when in spirit, when you see that, he is here. Okay, so it's like he's here. Maybe in the 3D, it looks like he's here, you're here, but in that 5D, it's he's in you. Or that 12D or whatever magnitude where he's in you and then it all around you, everywhere. Breadth, width, height, depth, everywhere of his love, of himself. In this kingdom of heaven, meaning there will be that you won't need to have some kind of food or drink because he becomes everything that you need. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He supplies all my needs. As my will is completely surrendered. My mind, will, and emotions, my whole soul is completely open to receive his love that transforms, is the power to transform us into the likeness of Christ, to be able to do the things that he did and live the way that he lived. He promises to use whatever it is for our good. You can always make it for good, and that's what he promises to do, until we get to the place where we don't need that anymore, because we will live in union. This is the place of union. This is the goal. Every believer, every searcher for life, the abundance of life, it is that state that Yeshua was always teaching us of servanthood. That selfless state. Ego cannot be in that state. Ego will say, I don't want to do that. I know that's the right thing to do, but I just don't feel like doing it. So ego's reacting that way. And if the person has to do that, ego also reacts and is grumpy, and it puts on a frown and makes a lot of noises of not being happy. So ego reacts either way. Without ego, there is that servanthood, but it is pure and it doesn't have that bitterness or resentment or hate or anger that it has to do those things. So it's the true way. Jesus said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. Shall not live in darkness, but shall have the light of life. When we feel like ego is starting to creep in, or you sense it actually starting wanting to react, fall back into humility. Now that you know the truth, now that you know this path, I don't want to play the game anymore. And I'm sure you don't want to be in this ego-driven matrix game anymore either. We want to come out of this game. That's why we accepted Christ, so he can help us to get out. We can follow that blueprint, and he in us can help us to get out of it. Because we're supposed to find the kingdom of heaven on earth. That is the first. If you can't do that, then the promise is that yes, when you die, you'll go to heaven. So when you feel that ego is creeping up, fall back into humility and love. Because now you know what is happening. The ego is being burned up every time you choose humility and love over lashing out from ego. If you lash out from ego, still remain in the matrix. But if you choose the humility and love, the ego will dwindle down and be burned up more and more. That is just going to lead closer to the end of the race. Living in love and humility fulfills the laws. So instead of thinking, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, okay, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, it's kind of overwhelming. Just say, I choose to live through humility and love. And if any situation comes up, I am going to respond through it from humility and love. From humility and love. This is my state, and therefore I walk and live in joy. And that rod of discipline is meant to get rid of ego. Everyone is more happy when they are humbled and when they are disciplined. At the time, discipline is not a fun thing, but after, the state of the soul is at peace and joy that it received love, because ultimately we know at the time it's happening, it doesn't feel good, but ultimately we know that it has to get rid of that ego. And even when I receive discipline from the Father, at the moment I may not like it, or at the moment I may realize what is happening and I give passive consent. And I just allow the Father to do that in me, because I myself don't want to live in that kind of confusive state. I want to live in joy. I want to live in the kingdom of heaven on earth. And by all means, I want to get out of this matrix and come to the end of that line and get the prize of the upward calling of heaven here on earth. And that is the destiny for those that choose Christ. When you choose Christ, these are the things that are going to happen. Some of the saints had these thorns in their side. Let me finish with this one thing. It says that, they prayed, Lord, that you would take this thorn out of me. But the Lord, in his wisdom, he kept the thorn. He didn't take it away from them, because the thorn was their tool that kept ego down, that kept them to be able to be humble, because in their humble state, they are able to be used of the Father, of God. Does that mean that we also have to have a thorn? Then remember, God uses all things for our good. That doesn't mean that God brings those things upon us, but he will use all things for good. And he will allow some things to remain so that it can keep humility, for the person to remain humble. But that doesn't mean they have to have it forever. If they're able to come to the place of total passivity, where their soul receives the fullness of God's love, that ego cannot be there to receive the fullness of God's love. It has to be burned up, all the way gone. No longer able to spring up or be fueled up to react again, or no matter what happens, it won't show itself anymore, because it is completely burned up once and for all by the Father's wisdom. And I believe that when you reach the end of the race, you no longer need that thorn or that thing that will keep you low with the ego and allow humility to always remain. I believe that as that ego is totally annihilated and burned up, there's no longer any need. And that is what our goal is, to get to that place. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in my next video. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Thank you.